Welcome back. Now we're talking business, Ayo.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of it.
Recently, well, some 2-3 years back, first of all, we've been talking about the Africa Free Trade Agreement for a very long time. And while he was still president of the Africa Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina said it was costlier to move goods from Nigeria to some African countries nearby than it is to move those same goods from Spain or from Europe to Nigeria or out.
Yeah.
And that was a little troubling. I thought that was all we were going to hear of it until Alhaji Dangote also said the same thing recently. And guess what? It was an international news platform that published it. So that says that that fact is already an international fact. Yeah. And I think that is one of the, it's troubling. If we can't trade among ourselves as Africans, then.
And we're always talking about Africa is this and Africa is that. There's always talk of African leaders come together, help each other, lift each other up. There's always talk when you have AU meetings where you have African leaders say we lift in looking words, help each other. So what's going on?
Well, I guess Prof will be able to tell us this morning because I have no idea.
All right. So Professor Banji Oyeyinka, Professor in Economics, Innovation and Technology Management in Developing Countries, also former Senior Special Advisor on Industrialization to the President of the African Development Bank. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure to join you this morning.
Right. Hopefully you can help us unravel this seeming problem of moving goods from factory to continental markets, which seems to be a problem we've been trying to solve. We've not been able to do it, and we're still trying again. What is the problem with the fact that, right, we've said, Nigeria, we manufacture our goods, be it, food goods or, what have you, and then now to transport it to international markets, be it Africa or, elsewhere in the world. Why do we have, such an issue being able to manage this last aspect of making money from whatever we produce?
Thank you. The problem is structural. It's multidimensional, basically both soft and hard infrastructure. We have laws that go back to the colonial era that divides all our countries, that makes interaction extremely difficult. We have issues of infrastructure like roads, like rail, airports, aviation, that have made it very difficult. They are almost like structurally fixed within our continent. For example, if you want to travel from a place like Abidjan to Lagos, the other day, someone paid $1,600. It's like going from Lagos to, not even Abuja. Yeah, Abuja, maybe let's say it's even. So you have all of these rules that are so stuck in our systems. Beyond the physical infrastructure. And they will take lots of effort. And I think that's why the Africa Continental Free Trade Area was established, to ensure that we minimize or remove some of these barriers. There are barriers that are locked in for a long time. And we just have to make concerted effort. And the example you are quoting is correct. For example, there was a report by Financial Times many years ago that shows that moving goods from Shanghai to Lagos is far cheaper than moving goods from Lagos mainland to Apapa port. And this is the fact that manufacturers, exporters, they face every day. There was a report also in, I think, Guardian, about 2, 3 years ago, that shows that the kinds of rules and institutional barriers for exporters to take goods from Nigeria to outside of the country is so difficult that many of them choose rather to go empty-handed, to go empty with their vessels because of the, sorry to say, a lot of it is also corruption. All agencies want to collect their own. I think I can't remember very correctly now, but about 22 different posts. Everybody wants to collect something. Everybody wants to extract some rent. So many people who import things into Nigeria, rather than take our goods, our products, and I will prefer manufactured products rather than raw materials out of the country, they go empty. And you can verify this. It's in a very extensive report by The Guardian. And I think other media outlets also followed up on that report. So, and this is why, for example, the Africa Development Bank under Dr. Adishton actually put up and Integrate Africa as one of the 5 basic pillars of developing the region. You remember we have the high 5. And one of the high 5s was actually Integrate Africa. And the bank did it quite a lot. I left there last year, and I hope it continues. And this is not just limited to from airport and ports to outside. It's also within our country. I mean, just go all over the country. I've seen a lot of effort by the current government in fixing the roads. I was pleasantly surprised on the Benin-Lagos road the other day. A lot of efforts are going, but historically, it's been difficult. Okay. In the state where I am, for example, in Oyo State, and I will give this example later, one of the big things that the governor has done is to open up hinterland. Those are the things that make movement of goods and services easy, and goods and services cheap.
Well, we'll come to the intra-national issues there, Prof. But the one that was made known by no less an industrialist in the country than Alhaji Aliko Dangote definitely isn't something that it's not a causery statement. It is something that's, I think from my naive perspective, Aliko Dangote isn't someone who would say anything until he has felt the pinch for a bit. And I think that must have really hurt for a bit. And from what you're saying, it means that it is not just something that is just happening, it's something that's been on for a long time. And if this has been on for such a long time, and successive governments continue to talk about the economy, then what do we need to do? What needs to be done? We have had issues raised with a minister in charge of supervising the ports at some point. And we've asked the question, why do we have so many agencies of government at the ports? Why can't there be just one-stop shop that addresses everything once and for all? So what do you think can be done to bring down this unnecessary bureaucracy and unnecessary costly bottlenecks? The taxation is probably one of them, where with this rearrangement of taxes and all, do you think that's a step to help? What are the things that you think need to be done seriously and as quickly as possible to eliminate these issues?
I think you just need to clear them away from the ports. If I can put it bluntly, I think it was done actually during President Buhari's time at some point, but it didn't last more than maybe 3-4 months. They were back. I recall that the vice president then used to go to the airport and all of that. They announced it. But the institutional rigidity that we have is such that people don't feel accountable. And I believe that we just need more severe oversight, more severe punishment for bad behavior. If we have to make progress, we have to institutionalize things not based on friendship or, oh, because the current somebody is my friend, we can't touch him. I know how difficult it is. You are going to the realm of political economy on what government itself should be. And one of the things that defines underdevelopment is, what people describe as weak governance. So you put something in place, you ensure that that thing is sustained over a long period and forever, actually. So it has to be a decision by the government itself, at the highest level, to say, look, enough of this. The issue of multiple agencies in the port, at the airports, and all of that, is a decision that has to be made collectively by the government of the day and say, look, this is harming us too much. In fact, I just didn't want to quote the wrong figures. The figures are humongous. What we lose, $250 billion, I remember, or something every week or something like that, from that report, that we lose by not having a smooth passage of goods from our country, by having people penalized so much that they are discouraged from exporting, by getting to a point where a lot of entrepreneurs prefer to smuggle through the road, through Cotonou, Benin, and all of those places. So it harms us unless we are self-sabotaging ourselves. That's when we don't take action on this. So this is, for me, economically existential, that government must act to deal with the issue. And Nigeria is a country that must show we have the best basis to export things, manufacture. A lot of people will like to export. They would like to, and of course there are a lot of other, soft infrastructure issues, certification, all of those things that makes our export very expensive. But this one we can tackle almost immediately. If the president tomorrow, like he did with subsidy, and say enough, and say this is gone, who is going to oppose the president? Who is going to say, President, you can't say it? I remember a story I had many years ago when the reform people, a minister was preaching the reform of the ports, and I think it was Dr. Addition was preaching the reform. He was giving the Tangier Med in Morocco as an example. If you go to that port, the place is a cluster of manufacturing, of automobile, of all manner of light, medium industries. And the minister then was saying, look, a port should not be a place where you are just collecting money and taxes. A port should be a place of production. So like and this is what Tangier Med is. So customs, the head of customs, you know what he said? He said, oh, gone are the good days of Nigerian custom. Wow. It's a mindset. So we have to first deal with the mindset. We have to educate our officials that our ports are not ports where you extract rent, where you punish those who are making efforts.
But aren't they also under pressure, Prof? Aren't they also under pressure, these agencies, Standards Organization of Nigeria, for instance, the customs and immigration, aren't they also under pressure to collect revenue, to hit a particular target? Because maybe that's one of the reasons they also have that problem.
So this is the mindset I'm talking about. The last statement I said is about mindset.
Okay.
Why is it that others are doing? And in any case, each time someone tells me that, oh, this is just Nigeria, it can never work, and I'm asking myself, why are we different? We have normalized the abnormality. We can't just be different and expect a different outcome. This is why, for example, we We are as poor as we are. So
Okay.
we have to change it.
Okay, Prof. So still on this issue, because I know that there are a number of other things we need to talk about. Still on this issue, the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said that he is targeting a $1 trillion or so economy for Nigeria. And in the maritime space, we hear that we lose billions every month or every year. And now we're talking about even in exports and imports, yeah, we're losing in hundreds of millions of dollars as well.
Billions, yeah.
Billions. So is this whole $1 trillion, is it just a pipe dream? How can they be achieved? Or rather, maybe I should put it a little more positively. If those things, if the vision of the president is going to be anywhere achieved, it has to be we have to make some serious sacrifices and pay some costs. And some of them could involve political costs, right?
Yeah. No, see, this president has demonstrated courage. He has demonstrated courage. Removing the subsidy was courage. Harmonizing the exchange rate was courage. So I believe that if people articulate this thing very well to him, I'm sure he probably won't hesitate to do it. If you want to grow to $1 trillion economy, let me break it down into, say, sectors. Every sector has to make contribution, from agriculture to manufacturing to the broader industrial space, to tourism, to infrastructure, ports, and all of this. Like you said, all of them must make their contribution, and then you add it up. And that's where you get the aggregate GDP of the country. Now, for you to achieve $1 trillion economy, right today we are about 250, 270 or something, under 300 billion. It means that you have to triple the current GDP for us to achieve $1 trillion economy. Now, according to the law, the economic law, if you want to achieve that, for example, in the next 7 years, the economy must grow at 10% growth per year. The economy must grow at 10%. If we want to achieve $1 trillion economy, in other words, you double. So if you want to, if you want to double the GDP, you have to grow at 10% over the 7 years. So now imagine, we're actually at a quarter of that. Theoretically, which means you may have to grow at about 15%, which is almost a pipe dream, because right now we're under 4%. So, but let's just say that we are targeting 10, 15 years because there's no magic to it. Any person can say whatever they like. We'll all be here by God's grace in 5 years. It will not happen. If they want to tell the truth to the authorities, you must take those hard decisions and ensure that every sector is making huge contribution, particularly manufacturing, agriculture, tourism. And tourism is also impacted by aviation, ports, and all of this, by all of these things that we just spelled out, inability to export, wasting almost $250 billion. So the authority must look at every sector and give them the targets, and then institute the monitoring and evaluation instrument to say every 6 months I want to, and I understand there was such a thing when the government came. I'm not sure whether it's working, to say every 6 months I want to know what you have done. I want to see how far you have made the contribution to my goal, to my vision. You know, I think at this forum, one time I gave you an example of a leader in Korea who, when they set up their steel project in 1980, the president, I'm not talking about the minister, the president was meeting with the group every week to for them to present to him what has changed from last week. Because they saw, they used to say, steel is power, steel is security. So it is for every country. You have to identify your leading sectors and say, without us achieving structural change in the economy, without us, say, improving our agriculture, without us saying, including all of this, 1, 2, 3, we are not going to achieve the $1 trillion.
Okay. Now, Prof, you talked about some sectors, and the one that seems to be playing in our favor as a country over the years, over the decades, as far back as I can remember, has been agriculture. And every time we left agriculture, we had problems. During the military era, I think sometime in the 70s and into the 90s, we were mostly not talking about agriculture. The only time we kind of spaded it was around the time we were talking about the Better Life program of Miriam Babangida at the time, and the Directorate for Food, Roads and Rural Infrastructure of the Babangida government at the time. Those were the only times during that spread, if I recall correctly, that any government spoke about agriculture in the military era that we had at the time. And throughout that time, we had problems when we were not talking about agriculture. And now we are trying to bring back agriculture, and we are hearing of all kinds of things happening all over the place. What do you think we need? What's a soft angle to it? I don't know whether if it's a soft angle that we can use to activate the communities, because I think that's where it all starts. There is no farm at the Akpakpa ports. There is no farm at One ports, but all goods that will go out of Nigeria will go to those places, whether in processed form or in raw forms. What are the things that are missing? I mean, you've talked about us producing. I mean, you wrote a book in 2016 titled From Consumption to Production. So if we're going to produce, it's going to be at the ports, and it is from the ports that those things, it's not going to be at the ports, it's going to be in the communities. And from those communities that they move their goods and all to the. So what are the things that need to be done to activate our people to produce enough? Because there's those who say, what are we exporting when we can't even produce enough for ourselves? So if we're able to produce enough for ourselves, we might have some to export. So what are your thoughts on how we activate communities so that we can at least, scale up production and be able to achieve some of these objectives you're talking about?
Thank you. No, thank you very much, Ayo. So let me sort of prefix that with 2 or 3 points, and then I'll explain how I see the community level improvement and revitalization. First, we make the assumption when we do macro issues that there's fair distribution and efficient market in our country. All those who design this so-called structural adjustment, trickle-down, which we actually call trickle-down economy, is that they assume efficient market system and a fair distribution channel in our country. I mean, you just need to look at the subsidy removal. And that was one thing that I think the president was spot on, removed it. It became an avenue for the rich to get richer. NASAL, if you remember, there was an organization called NASAL that was set up in those days to give credit to commercial agriculture through the banks. It was working very efficiently. They were working, default rate was like maybe less than 1%. And millions of farmers were rich with credit. But again, it suffered state capture. Some individuals captured it. They dealt with it, all this anchor borrower stuff. So, market is not efficient. Distributions is not fair. Number 2, poor public service delivery. We don't have. Effort have been made, power, water. When last did you ever see community, what you call a public water system? Everybody has borehole in their homes. The third thing with trickle down for me is this savings trap. When we do reform and people benefit, they benefit largely at a level not less than 20% of the richest. That's the truth. You call it wealth concentration. So, and those who save are those who are rich. They save 40, 50%, but it's all packed into financial assets, or they ship them abroad to buy more houses in Dubai, everywhere. So a country where you don't have a culture of production and manufacturing, the channels to invest at in that lower levels to benefit the poor is absent. So so you have a perpetuation of wealth concentration. And now what has happened? Not just now, it's always been like that. If you just focus on the macro level. And the last thing I want to say is that you will continue to exclude the poor because opportunity is not freely available. Talents is available, but opportunities are not there. An illiterate person is not educated. He has no connection to anybody. He has no primary, secondary, whatever it is. And this is why university, primary, and secondary education is something that had been universal. Japan was 100% literate in 1922. So when those rural people, and I come to your direct question now, the people in those rural communities and peri-urban areas, as we call them, are the majority of our population. They are where the exclusion is the most severe. They are the most punished by market forces. They are those who are living $2 a day or below. They are the people who cannot afford to eat 2-3 times a day. And that is where the poverty siege has to be broken. My point is that this commission that the president has established is one of the most wonderful ideas, I believe. The Southwest Commission, and I'm mentioning that in particular because currently we are working with them. We came up with an idea called the transformed communities. We abbreviate it to Transcom. And Transcom is an idea to have a systematic and organized community all across the Southwest and any other state region that wants to do it. Basically, that is how it works. You look at villages. When you drive across our communities, you see one village here, 2 villages here, 10 huts, 10 houses, or something close to a house. They are all isolated. The greatest problem of rural community is isolation. It's not that they're stupid, it's not that they don't work hard, they are isolated. Isolation from power, energy, from water, from internet, from social protection of any kind, they are isolated. So you drive another 10 kilometers, you don't see anybody. And then you see their children carrying water on their head. You see children walking from one village to a school that is 20 kilometers away. They get raped, they get kidnapped, they get all kinds of issues. So we came up with the idea of Transcom. And Transcom will be an aggregation of several villages, between 2,000 to 8,000 people. In that space, we have what we call 7 pillars of community development. You put the most foundational infrastructure, which is power through grid system. You put water through boreholes, whatever it is. You put social protection, you put schools, clinics, basic things that make life livable. We have actually started experimenting in the Southwest to say that, look, this can work. So by the time in each of the 137 local governments of the Southwest, you have multiple of such Transcoms. We did a model, and I took a cue from the $2 per day poverty level. We did a model, and we showed that if we move people from 2 to 10 to $15 per day, it almost added about 120 billion to the economy of in fact, Oyo State alone, and to the Nigerian economy. So that again comes your $1 trillion economy. And I believe that making the effort to change the ecosystem of our rural communities will make us achieve the $1 trillion economy faster. In fact, in the next 5-10 years, Nigeria can get to $1 trillion economy if states governments, if the commissions focus their energy on simply changing those ecosystems, ensure that these people can wake up every day. You go to a Transcom will, at the center of the Transcom that we are building,
yes,
is the productive
apologies.
aggregation,
Apologies,
agriculture process. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if I can come in there. So, I mean, they're laudable initiatives, and I think they're interventionist initiatives vis-a-vis, you know, the regional commissions, and then these initiatives are coming in to kind of help to buffer whatever it is they're going to do. So, does this mean that, you know, the macro economic policies, you know, are not enough to, you know, benefit the poor and pull the people out of poverty without, you know, these other interventions that you're talking about?
Definitely. Everywhere throughout all of history, it has never been enough. It's an illusion that is easy to live with. Policymakers may want to live with that and say, oh, we've done all we can, you know. But it doesn't work like that. It will never work like that. So you have to have direct intervention, not by sharing money. You know, I get it, that it's easy for altruism, you know, human altruism. Oh, people gather in your house every day, you share 200 naira to them. It's not going to change their lives. The easiest way to change the lives of people is free education at the primary, secondary level. You must make sure that everyone have their own human agency and give them agency to work, wake up every day and go to work. China never did all of this conditional transfer. They never did it. They took 878 million people out of poverty over those years of breakneck growth, 10%, 9% for 30 years, and they were doubling their GDP every year. But one of the sources of those growth was those rural communities. They changed it. I am a witness to it. I wrote a book with a Chinese fellow, Chinese School of Social Policy. I can't even remember the name of the book again. I was in China almost 2-3 times every quarter when I was in the UN, and we worked with these folks. And you could see, they call it the China scale and scope. This rapidity with which they totally broke down and demolished the old order of a rural community that is poor, destitute, devastated by old mines. You know, I saw a particular community with the mines had destroyed those places. They just took it down and built high rises. And then they gave all those who have land there, they gave them shares in the high rise. And then, of course, the most important thing, and I keep emphasizing, it's not altruism, is to now give them work to do. You wake up every day and you are going to a work. So in our Transcom example, for example, in a place called Fapote in Ogbomosho, near Ogbomosho, the Bale there gave us immediately 20 acres of land. And he said to me, anything you want, we'll provide for you.
Wow.
I got a friend, during this, we had a meeting recently, and this fellow, they are building grid system. They immediately went there. They have built something like that in Odorobo in Ondo State. It's working seamlessly for the last 2 years. People are paying about 670 kVA in that community.
You know, Prof, we could go on and on. I sincerely apologize. We could go on and on about this because it's all sounding so exciting, but unfortunately we are completely out of time. Because one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how does this Transcom that you're talking about, how does it differ, for instance, from the SAPZ, the Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones, you know, AFDB has spoken about. You know, but maybe one of these days we'll have to bring you back to have this conversation with us.
Let me just explain one. Okay. SAPZ, fantastic idea. It stands at a higher level.
Okay.
So what you are saying now is that you build these zones, but who feed them with all the things, the raw materials? So it is those community level In fact, with the SAPC, we also have what we call agri-transformation centers. These are my own inspirations, that beyond just having an ATC, build a whole community. They become more productive.
So essentially,
they can protect themselves.
Yeah, essentially you're saying that the SAPZs are just processing zones that need to be fed.
Mostly processing zones, yeah.
So they need to be fed what to produce, and this Transcom initiative...
with cassava, with sesame, with all of that.
Okay.
So you need those communities as the resilient backbone of our society.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. Professor Banji Oyeyinka is a professor of economics, innovation, and technology management in developing countries. He's also been former senior special advisor on industrialization to the president of the EFDB, among several other things that he's done all through his career. One of these days, hopefully we'll get to it. Thank you again, Prof, for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ira. Thank you.